I'm Isabel Blakemore, technology presenter here at UC today, and this week in our big news update, we will be dissecting the top news stories over the past couple of weeks with an exclusive interview with the principal from J Arnold Associates. In this episode, we will be focusing on 3 important UC stories, which has drawn lots of attention in the UC landscape. The first is that Zoom has rebranded its chat application to Zoom Team Chat in a move designed to position the tool more aggressively against the likes of Teams and Slack. Meanwhile, Microsoft has given its Teams Room subscription a makeover with a new Pro tier, but some in the industry are questioning whether this actually benefits customers. And finally, it's been a packaged couple of months for Avaya, so we round up where the vendor is now and what it has to do to recover. So let's get straight into it by discussing one of our top stories. A story which has been hot in the news right now is that Zoom Chat is changing its name to Zoom Team Chat and getting new features as part of a campaign to highlight its wider capabilities that are often better known with competitors. Zoom Team Chat provides users with chats and channels which can be used to keep the team connected, stay on track with projects, and connect work streams. New features of this new concept include sharing in-meeting chat to team chat, scheduling meetings from chats and channels, reminders, third-party integrations, and many more. UC Today's senior editor Tom Wright has been speaking to Jon Arnold, the principal from J Arnold Associates, in a special interview discussing the biggest news over the last couple of weeks in the UC landscape, including this top story within Zoom. Let's take a look.
Jon, thanks so much for joining us. We know you're really busy as the industry's sort of waking up from summer, so we appreciate you taking the time out to speak to us today.
Okay, Tom. Yep, glad to be here. And hello, everybody who's watching this episode today.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about some of the big news over the last few weeks. Get a bit of your insights, add a bit more value for our audience. And we're going to start with Zoom. Zoom recently revamped its chat tool, its chat platform. There's a few new features in there, but it feels a bit more than that. It feels a bit more like they're trying to sort of reposition it to sort of take on some of the competition in the market. So I'd like to just start, quite an open question really, just get your thoughts on what Zoom's doing around chat and this announcement.
Well, at a high level, Tom, I think it validates what Slack has been doing all along, that having a persistent chat kind of option, or in fact being the default lead for how people communicate in groups, I think that helps bear out what they were trying to do. And but first and foremost, of course, Zoom is very much locked in a head-to-head with Microsoft Teams. There's no doubt about it. Teams, owns the desktop. That's where most of what Zoom does lives, right? So they've got to own that real estate as much as they can. They can't compete with Office 365, of course, or any of the other things Microsoft does, but here against Teams one-to-one, yeah. And them, and of course the other big collab platforms as well. Tom, as we know, they've been in an endless arms race to keep upping the feature set, right? Just keep adding, the video, the voice, the AI, and yes, now the chat. And, because Teams does not have native telephony, right, chat becomes an important feature for them to drive engagement, right? Because it really is all about how do you make the platform as sticky as possible so once people get on that platform, they stay on that platform. And as we know, Zoom started only, so they couldn't really capture the whole collab experience. But now, they've added telephony, and I think the success, right, Tom, that they had with adding telephony last year or so, the numbers they're hitting right now, 4 million, I think, going on 5, that tells them, whatever they're doing, it's working. So they have zero risk, I think, in adding the chat piece. What I don't like is how it's making their logo look ridiculously long and more like a train than anything else.
There's a few O's in there now, isn't there?
Oh yeah, and yeah, I know the market keeps growing at that rate where you just keep adding another 0 every few weeks. Yeah, but even Zoom is running up against limits, right? They've so saturated the market for video. So it's kind of something they have to do and they can do. And the last thing I'll say is I think it's easier for a video first platform to add chat than it is for chat platform to add video. Video is a harder problem to solve. right? So it's easier for them to add that piece on, and clearly it adds a lot of value to go up against the other collab players.
And do you think part of the problem here is that perhaps businesses or people don't realise that it has the functionality in there? Because, I've used Zoom kind of all through the pandemic, and I kind of remember the chat window being in there, but I didn't know anyone else on it, so I wasn't really using it. But it has been there, hasn't it? But they've kind of got such a good reputation for being solid in video that perhaps some of the other elements haven't sort of filtered into businesses' consciousness that much.
Yeah, well, I think it's a lot of things. It's behavioral, right? I mean, the point of entry for Zoom, I think for almost everybody has been video, right? The point of entry for Teams has almost probably always been email, chat, maybe some voice, right? But not necessarily a video experience first. Collaboration, yes, but you don't have to have video for every form of collaboration.
Yeah, I just wonder, do you, when you're out and about talking to businesses, are you seeing that it's generally Zoom plus Slack or Zoom plus Teams? Are you seeing many businesses going all in with Zoom and having their chat as the chat?
I wouldn't say so yet. I think that's pretty early to tell. They've always been very careful and coy about this. Well, we're not really competing with Teams. We're trying to augment the experience, but now I think it's clear that this is kind of a battle for the desktop, and we've kind of been in this all or nothing world for a while now, where the top players in collab are all trying to get the whole share of mindset and wallet out of and two, the other value add, of course, is that if they can make the support for these platforms easy for IT, kind of as a managed services thing, the less stress on IT, the better. That is an important audience they have to be catering to as well. And I think Zoom, again, I said about video is a harder nut to crack than chat. If they've gained the trust of IT, right, for managing video, they've had their share of security breaches, of course, and I think they've done a great job to update that based on their last Zoom Perspectives event. But you gain the trust of IT for that. Adding chat is really not that big of a deal. But I think for the foreseeable time, we're still going to see that kind of mix in the market. And not every video session needs to be a Zoom session. Not every collab session is going to be a team session. Often it's dependent on what the customer you're dealing with, if it's an external call, is most comfortable with. And you've got to be able to support more than one.
Yeah, great. I've just got one more question on Zoom, actually, before we move on. As we said, they've become a household name over the last few years for their video, but they have got chat, they have got, I just made a little list here, they've got rooms, they've got contact centre, events, obviously Zoom phone. Are they doing a good job at getting the message across in terms of what's in that entire portfolio?
Well, I think so. They do run the risk of trying to be too many things to too many people. When it was just video, you knew exactly what you were getting, solved a difficult problem, and that won them a great following. And you can't deny that they just happened to hit the market, be the right solution at the right time during pandemic, right? And because of that, they're actually very much aware that Zoom's become a verb. That tells you how successful they are. And now that everyone's using it, and a lot of them aren't paying much to use it, they've got to grow the business. So they have to move beyond just that application, and now they know they're playing in a bigger arena now for the whole collaboration piece. So it for video, but they have to make it known for other things, simply because they have to keep growing, and that came out from their recent earnings that still post good numbers, but is disappointing to them because they want to keep that near exponential growth curve growing, and that's not possible to do, but you can only keep it moving in the right direction with new sources, new applications, and that's clearly what they're doing.
Okay, great. Well, let's move on to our next story then, and this is Microsoft Teams Rooms. And I guess at a high level, it's the announcement of Teams Room Pro, which is the new upper tier for Teams Rooms. Microsoft put out quite a lot of positive PR around this, but it looks like things maybe aren't quite as straightforward as Microsoft made out. Do you want to maybe just kind of talk us through your kind of thoughts on this one, and then we'll go into a bit more detail about some of the implications?
Well, sure. They have the biggest target of anyone on their back. right? And as I said before, this is about, control of the desktop. And when you start, anytime you take something away that the market likes, you're going to get a lot of pushback. And their challenge, because they are so dominant, right, Tom? They have competition certainly from everyone below them. There really isn't anyone above them, but there certainly are enough players kind of at their level who are direct competitors. And yes, Zoom is one of them. You've got to put Cisco into that mix there as well. They have to be watching Amazon and Google. They can make big moves on a very short notice. So they have to please both ends of the market. In other words, the ones who are getting a very good value at the lower end, this whatever it was standard offering, now they're getting very little. But at the other end, they gotta have to move people up market, because at the end of the day, they've got to make money, and that's never been a problem for Microsoft. But boy, oh boy, they have to also, there's a path to upsell. And this is classic when you are that dominant and you can lock in a lot of users kind of on a basic package, right? That's a little bit like that freemium model, right? Where you get them going on the affordable piece. Then you add the bigger ones and you say, oh, well, you want the sexy AI, transcriptions, meeting notes, all the cool applications. And then, of course, the fun video, like the stadium views and all these types of things. Well, okay, and now you're really competing against, Zoom. You're going to have to pay more for that. And of course, they have to give a runway, too, for the channels, right? Because when you sell more rooms and meetings solutions, you can also sell more hardware with the endpoints. And that's still an important driver for the channel, right? Software licenses are nice, and that provides that annuity income, right? But they all love having endpoints to sell. They're not going to sell big video systems anymore, but they can sure sell a lot of webcams and, of course, huddle room size screens and bigger conference room screens. The stuff that really makes the in-person experience part of the value proposition they're selling, because it is still very much part of what Teams is offering.
Yeah, and I guess Microsoft is no stranger into making this kind of move. It's something they've done before, not even just in the the communication space, in their kind of IT world as well. And they are quite good at adding quite a lot of features onto things like Teams rooms before knocking the price up. So I guess some people would say, well, we're paying a bit more, but a lot has been added since they started this. I don't know, was it 5-6 years ago now?
Well, they do it because they can, right? Because they're so dominant. They have the market power, but of course, that can work against you if better and cheaper alternatives come. And of course, that's what all the cloud players, right, the Vonages and Rings and 8x8s of the world and Dialpads, they're all chasing that and saying, well, we can give you that for less and just integrate with Teams so you have a simple experience, right? And that's just the nature of the market, right?
Yeah, okay. Maybe just one final question on that, actually. The meeting room space in general is an interesting one, particularly as people are, working out their dynamic of hybrid and remote working. Are there any particular trends that you're seeing there that you think, our audience should keep an eye on?
Well, you mean for like rooms feature?
Yeah, just fun for meeting room spaces in general. What's in demand? What you're seeing companies do.
Yeah, well, that collaboration experience in a room is becoming, it's kind of like one of the anchors that when we have return to office, right, that makes the office environment a better experience than working at home, right? After, thinking about how spoiled we've become working remotely and kind of loving it and don't miss the commute, all that stuff. Well, if you're going to make this hybrid model work, you still have to get them back to the office. And it's not enough just to say, oh, come do what you're doing at home at your desk here, at your cube. That's really just, there's no gain there. But when you can say, you can have these great room experiences, you can't get that at home, right? And then all of a sudden that makes that reason to go back to the office a little stronger. When you're at the desktop and experiencing it remotely, it's okay. But when you're in that room and you have that more immersive experience, it reminds you of, there are good things about being back in the office. So they're very conscious of that enterprises, they got a lot invested in their real estate, right, and their footprint. And if they're going to keep it going, they've got to make that return to office a better experience. And the meeting rooms is one of the best ways they can do that.
Yep, absolutely. And right, we've got a bit more time. Why don't we move on to our last story, which is one that's probably going to run on for a little while longer, and that's Avaya. It's been a tricky time for Avaya. I suppose if we were to try and sum it up in a sentence, it's things looked like they were going quite well on the move to the cloud with one cloud, and have perhaps faltered a little bit over recent months. I know Avaya is a company you follow quite closely, so maybe you could just give us a kind of an overview, from your point of view, how you've seen things go there.
Yeah, well, the best thing a company can do in this situation is be transparent and just, get to a point where you can have a clean slate to start fresh, because, the underlying value of the business, everybody knows what Avaya has, right? And so this is not really a problem of technology. Where they've come short, they've partnered, right? They gave up on UCaaS, they've kind of handed that to Ring for their partnership, right? But they have, such a valuable customer base. The name of the game now is for them is to, overcome the management problems that put them in this mess, and get that clean slate. And that's where Alan Mazurek comes in and says, I've done this before. I've had success turning Vonage into a real winner, and now let's, we have to do some fixing here. So his runway is short because he's got to please investors and keep the confidence of customers and channels going. We all know that. So you've got to move quick. And the big job cuts from, 3,000 last week or so won't be the last, but you've got to go deep, you've got to go fast, and you've got to say, listen, we're doing the things we need to bring our costs in line. Their margins aren't as good as what the rest of the industry has, so this is one way to do that. And, they went through this before, coming out of Chapter 11, right, to right-size the business, get their finances in order. But you only get one shot at Chapter 11. They're not going to get a second chance. So they have to get it right on this run through. And if they don't, the company could either be acquired or more likely sold for parts. Very much, there are some interesting parallels, Tom, depending how far back you go with the Nortel story, where their rise to fame kind of cratered in a hurry and how things ended up. But, their undoing was more, not being transparent and making a lot of the wrong decisions. Here, at least, Avaya doesn't have that issue. They just have to close the books on the bad numbers, start fresh, build the margins up, build the confidence of the market. They can still do it, right? Like before out of Chapter 11, they're a smaller, more focused company. We've heard this before. They'll be even more so now. They don't really have much choice. And they've just got to just keep executing. And, their calling card now is the pedigree and how do you keep the confidence and trust of the marketplace. That's the most important thing for them right now. I'd like to see them do it. I think we would all be worse off to lose them. Another legacy vendor that kind of built this industry. You really hate to see that go. And the customer base still makes them a very important player. And they've just got to execute. So a guy like Alan Mazurek is probably the right guy at the right time for this kind of a need. And time will tell. The investors, when they run out of patience, that's what's going to determine whether Avaya continues or not. So, got to deliver those results quick. So he's got 1, maybe 2 quarters to really show that they've got the fix right this time.
Yeah, and you mentioned they're kind of important in terms of the history of the industry, and they've got a lot going on there. UCaaS, CCaaS, one cloud. What would you say is the real strength in in the Avaya business that they can really, I suppose, anchor their kind of resurgence to?
I think it's the customer base. Their technology is not, I wouldn't say it's like the leading edge, best in class, up and down the ladder, but their technology is I think good enough to keep them in the game, and their challenge is more about management and execution of their vision, right? So they contact center, crown jewel, right? UCaaS, as you said, CPaaS, which they've always had. And they've made investments in AI, Affinity, companies like that. They have all those pieces. Mobility is not one of their storylines, but it doesn't have to be. There's enough there. it's really not about technology, I think, for them. It's really how they keep the faith of the market going with what they have. So it's really, it's mostly about keeping the base, right, as close and as in-house as you can. The real indicator, if they're making it out of this mess or not, Tom, is the new ads. Are they showing traction, actually winning business away from competitors? Because all the competitors talk all day long about how much they're poaching from Avaya here and there, and there has to be some truth to that, but they're still going, they still have a viable business, and they've got to demonstrate that they're, the vendor of choice, and you show that by the new wins. And that, to me, would be a very good indicator if they're on the right track.
Okay, and just one final question on Avaya. When you sort of look at their offering, they've got Avaya Cloud Office, they've got Spaces, they've got OneCloud, there's OneCloud CCaaS, there's quite a lot going on there. Compared to some of the companies we spoke about earlier who perhaps just have one platform and you turn different parts on. Is there, do you think what Avaya's doing is getting across to the market? Is it clear enough?
Probably not. Avaya has gone through all kinds of, odd nomenclature, Equinox, Aurea, all stuff that I've always had trouble kind of piecing it all together, knowing what fits where. They're not the only vendors struggling with this, but it also, I think, kind of reflects their roots of being an engineering company at heart, right? Engineers are great at inventing things. They're terrible at coming up with names for things or making them relevant to the marketplace. And Avaya does have this mix that is a little hard to follow. They talk about composable architecture, right? And the platform, what is it called, MPC? And all the vendors are doing this, single platform for all the applications. And I think they have that piece in place as well. But I find their nomenclature a little hard to follow. And if it's hard for me, it's got to be tricky for the channels and, of course, the end customers. So, that just comes with the territory when you are an engineering-led company. So hopefully they'll make ways to make that work. I don't know how you do that. And I think, like a lot of things, if you like the company, you live with the names, right? Does the technology meet your needs? That's really the most important thing. So we'll see.
Yeah, okay. Well, you'll be pleased to know I'm done grilling you on the news, but it might be nice just to finish by looking forward. I don't think it was a particularly quiet summer, actually. I felt like a lot was still going on, but we are approaching, I think, a very busy October. You as an analyst, I'm sure you're used to your Octobers being packed. What have you got kind of in your diary? What are you looking forward to? What should we be looking out for?
Yeah, well, I think the real thing for everyone is returning to live in-person events, right? Both vendor events and industry. And so I've got a mix of those going on. So throughout most of October and a good chunk of November as well, almost up to Thanksgiving, I've got constant events that are going to be, there's a couple of virtual ones too, but I'll certainly be your way in London for UC Expo. I think I'm doing 2 panel sessions on the Thursday, and that'll be one stop during next month. But yeah, lots of vendor events happening, and so it becomes a blur. I got to tell you, Tom, after the 3rd or 4th event in a row kind of thing, it's hard to keep track. So all I can tell you is, eat the dog food, use the apps that the vendors are selling. I take a lot of notes. Transcription is very helpful. I take a lot of screenshots and pictures just so I can have a recollection of everything that happened. And then trying to share it with you guys and my own blog and newsletter, etc., etc. So the good news is I get to see a lot. And as an analyst, I think one of my contributions to the community is sharing what I see. Right? So that's the role of my blog and my newsletter and my podcast, where I get to kind of let people know what are the takeaways from these events. And I'd be happy to revisit that with you later on, maybe later in October after I've been to 4 or 5 or 6 of these things, and lots of takeaways for sure.
Yeah, John, that'd be fantastic. We really appreciate you coming on the show. I'm at UC Expo, so hopefully we can maybe grab a coffee in between your sessions. But in the meantime, it's been great talking to you, and thanks for giving us such thoughtful answers.
That was an insightful talk with some interesting key points. Thank you, Jon, for joining us. Don't forget to catch our upcoming events like UCX 2022 in London and Microsoft Ignite, which are both from October the 12th, 2022. And we also have Cavell Cloud Comms Summit USA in Chicago coming up, which is from the 18th of October 2022. These events will be full of exclusive interviews and insights into the UC world, which you won't want to miss, and you can register now by clicking on the links below this video. That's all from me. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notification alerts so you don't miss any more of our news analysis. To keep up to date with all the latest news from the UC world, sign up to our weekly newsletter, which you can find below this video. Thanks for watching.